Alright, Shalom. Giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rachak, Radash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect. There's a point in Daniel's chapter, well, not a point, but certain precepts, or this part in Daniel's chapter 8 that I want to focus on. Usually when people go over this breakdown, they usually go over that this was when Alexander took down the Persian Empire, which is also known as the Achaemenid Empire, which is true, but it wasn't just because most people just know that Alexander took down the Persian Empire at the Battle of Gaugamela, and then that's it. But there's more to it. It wasn't just the Battle of Gaugamela. There was two other fights previous to the Battle of Gaugamela that was like the building point up or whatever, or like how you usually have in movies or in video games, you'll fight the boss 3 times, and then the third time is when you beat him. Well, there was two battles previous to that final battle that Alexander the Great had with the Persian Empire. And I'm just read this real quick. It's Daniel chapter 8, verse 5. And as I was considering, behold, an he goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between its eyes, right? And that he goat is the Grecian Empire, and the goat that had a notable horn between his eyes, that horn is Alexander the Great. And he came to the ram that had two horns, which the ram that had two horns is the Medo-Persian Empire, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fear of his power, right, going into the wars that it had. And that's what I want to go into is it was 3 wars that Alexander the Great had with the Persian Empire. It wasn't just the Battle of Gaugamela, and that's it. So let's go into one of the battles. And what you see right here is the Battle of the Granicus, or the Battle of Granicus River. This was the first fight that Alexander the Great had with the Persians. And when he went into his fight, he didn't fight Darius III. Darius III was at the last fight, which was the Battle of Gaugamela. So it says, the Battle of the Granicus River in May 334 BC was the first of the 3 major battles fought between Alexander the Great and the Persian Empire, fought in northwestern Asia Minor near the site of Troy. It was here that Alexander defeated the forces of the Persian satraps of Asia Minor, including a large force of Greek mercenaries led by Memnon of Rhodes. Right, so this is the first fight that Alexander had with the Persian Empire. And just to show you where it took place, like it said, this took in Asia Minor. Well, actually, hold on, Salaki, let me find a better picture so you can see it more up close. Because before Alexander became king of Grecia, his father, Philip the second, was king of Grecia, but they killed him off. The Greeks killed him off, and then when Alexander took over, Alexander was trying to show himself to be, like trying to liberate his people, but his people, the Greeks, wanted to be under the Persians because they was fine with that. So Alexander was not. I gotta go, liberate my people. He had the same idea as his father did. That his father wanted. They thought that the Greek culture was what the world needed. So when Alexander brought that Hellenism, he's really bringing the same ideas that his father had. But at the time, the people, the Greeks, wasn't with that. They were fine with being under the Persians. So Alexander set off to go and fight against the Persians to liberate his people and to bring in the Hellenization, because he had the same idea, or was following the same footsteps as his father. They thought that the world needed the Greeks, right? So I just want to find a picture that I know is here. Okay, right. So after Alexander's father died, King Philip II died. The Greeks killed him. Alexander had to put down some revolts in Grecia. Now I can't remember where those what the name of those revolts were, but he had to put down some revolts. He had to bring the chaos down in Greece. And after he did, he set his this is the red line that you see, is him making his way to go to the Granicus River to fight the Persians. But prior to that, as Alexander was making his way there, uh, if you see it real close, it says Memnon and satraps. Now, this is another character we have to get into. Memnon of Rhodes. Hold on, let me Hold on. I'm gonna be jumping back and forth a little bit. Bear with me 1 second. Salakia. Now we gotta get into who Memnon of Rhodes is. He's a little, not a major player, but a little bit of a key player. Excuse me. Right? So here we have Memnon of Rhodes, right? It says Memnon of Rhodes was a prominent Rhodian Greek commander in the service of the Persian Achaemenid Empire. So right, he was serving the Persians. Related to the Persian aristocracy by marriage of his sister to satrap, I apologize, I hope I said this right, Artabazus II, together with his brother Mentor. He served the Persian king for most of his life and played an important role during the invasion of Alexander the Great and decades before that, right? So basically, this character right here, Memnon of Rhodes, he was a Greek that was working for the Persians. Every story always has that. Even with our own people, they're always working for the enemy. You always have that character that's on the side of the enemy. So what of Rhodes wanted to do when he heard about Alexander coming, what he wanted to do was all this land that you see Alexander had to travel to. He told the Persians that if we want to slow down Alexander or easily defeat him, because when Alexander was on his way to fight the Persians, because he knew he had to prove himself and he wanted to, like I said earlier, liberate his people. He didn't have the support of his people, nor did he have any money or anything. So it was just pretty much Alexander and his military going to fight against the Persians. And everybody at that time was like, "You can't fight against the Persians. Are you mad?" So what Memnon of Rhodes, when he was talking to a Persian council, he basically said, "Yo, if we want to just take care of these people easily, why don't we just burn the land so that way when Alexander comes through the land, he won't have no food, no nothing, and he can't make his way here." But because Memnon of Rhodes was a Greek, the Persians didn't trust him, and they was like, "We're not doing that," because they just didn't see, which really goes back to the Spirit of the Lord, because the Lord wanted this to happen. He set Alexander up. But the Persians didn't trust Memnon of Rhodes because he was a Greek. Even though he would work with the Greeks his whole life and he was loyal to them, they still didn't trust him because he was a Greek. So Memnon of Rhodes, his idea was to burn the land that Alexander had to travel through, so that way by the time they got to the battle, they wouldn't have no food, no water, no anything. It would be an easy fight to just defeat them. But the Persians said nah, which is really the Most High Yahweh Bashem Ashah, because again, like I said, he wanted Alexander to be set up. But the Persians said, no, that's a crazy idea. We're just going to leave the land. We're just going to wait for them to come here so we can fight them. So that's what you're seeing right here. And this is where, again, like I said, this is where the battle took place in Asia Minor. That's the Granicus River right there. So let's go back to the wiki real quick. Salakia, just bear with me. And you can also see on this map as well. Okay, so right, this is the background, right? So it says, after the death of Philip of Macedon, many of his newly conquered territories desired to take advantage of the perceived weakness of the new young king, right? Because they thought Alexander was weak. Oh, here it is, right? These nations included the Illyrians, Thracians, and some southern Greek city-states. Alexander had to prove the strength of his rule before leaving for his Persian expedition and crush several nascent rebellions within Greece and the northern tribes. After extensive planning in Macedonia, Alexander started to prepare for his next major conquest, the invasion of Asia. Before leaving Macedon, Alexander appointed his father's experienced general Antipater as regent in his absence, leaving him with 9,000 infantry and 1,500 cavalry to maintain control over Macedonia's holdings in Europe in spring of 334 BC, right? Alexander took 2,600 cavalry and went on a 20-day march from Macedon to Hellespont to join Parmenion in Asia, right? So that 20-day march, it was that 20-day march is the time that the Persians could have, if they had listened to Memnon of Rhodes, they could have burned the land because they had 20 days to burn the land and could have slowed down Alexander or really weakened Alexander and his forces. But because they didn't trust Memnon of Rhodes, that pretty much led to their downfall. So let's get into the deployment of troops. Hold on, let me see. Do I need to get into this? Yeah, we'll just read it. It says, before Alexander's army were able to cross the Hellespont, the Persian provincial governors and others in power at that time in Persia assembled their forces of 10 to 20,000 cavalry and 5 to 20,000 infantry to the town of Zela. Memnon was a high-ranking Greek mercenary employed by the Persians. Oh, it's all right here, Slovakia. And he advised the Persians to lay waste to the land that Alexander would have to pass, depriving his army of food and supplies. This would make it harder for Alexander and his army to survive on their long journey before the battle. The satraps did not trust Memnon because of his nationality, right, like I said before, and did not ravage their territories. The Persians had two major objectives. First, they would try to force Alexander towards a position of their choosing before he can continue inland, and second, the Persians hoped to be able to be in a defensive position that would minimize Alexander's advantage in infantry. The Persians advanced from Zela to the Granicus River, which would be an obstacle for Alexander and his army. The Persians hoped that his army would not be able to hold formation, which would severely cripple its effectiveness, as maintaining the closely packed and mutually supportive formation typically employed by the Greeks was central to their strategy. Okay, so let's just get into the battle real quick. So I'm just gonna click up. All right, so what you have is the Granicus River, right? You see the river right there in the front, and the you have Alexander on one side, and then you have the Persians on the top side. And when you Alexander and his army couldn't just go into the river because it's a river and it was also muddy. That would slow them down from just rushing just going after the Persians. And Salakia, the spirit just helped me remember this point as well. At the time when Alexander popped up on the Persians, it was like, I believe it was like in the afternoon, maybe late afternoon, from last time I was studying this, and Alexander had his general there, Parmenion, who's usually on the left side now. In this picture, they don't show his where he is, but his general Parmenion will always be on the left side anytime they went to their battles to war. And it's said in according to biblical well, not biblical styles, but historians, that whether this is true or not, that Parmenion said that, look, we had a long day's traveling here to get here. Let's just wait till the next day to go to war with the Persians. But Alexander was like, nah, screw that. We're gonna fight right now. And that's something that caught the Persians off guard, because see, the Persians were there waiting already for Alexander. But Alexander had to travel there, like I said. He went on a 20-day journey to get there. So his general Parmenion was like, look, we need to chill out, just hold, let's just fight them tomorrow when we're all rested. But Alexander was like, nah, we're gonna get them right now. And that's something that caught the Persians off guard, because they wasn't expecting that. And as you can see, here's the battle formations that they had and the way they went after the Persians. Alexander being on the right, and you have the central the center of his army pushing forward, and Alexander pushing from the right. And during the fight as well, Alexander, oh, let me see, because it's probably, because I know this off the top of my head, but it's probably going to tell you this in here as well. So let me just read it. According to Alexander's biographer Arrian, Alexander's army met the Persians on the third day of May from Abydos. Alexander's second in command, Parmenion, said, okay, yeah, so it's all right here, suggested crossing the river upstream and attacking at the dawn of next day. But Alexander attacked immediately. This tactic caught the Persians off guard. The Macedonian line was arrayed with heavy phalanxes in the middle and cavalry on either side. Salakia, I didn't know that Wikipedia would have all this. I know this story off the back of my head from studying it, so I didn't think Wikipedia would have all this. Salakia. The Macedonian line was arrayed with heavy phalanxes in the middle and cavalry on each side. Alexander was with the companions on the right flank. The Persians expected the main assault to come from Alexander's position and move units from their center to the flank. I don't want to make this too long because I can't record forever. All right, I don't want to read all this because I can't record forever. So I'm gonna just tell you the battle from what I know from studying. So what you see here on the picture right now, after Alexander charged from the right side, and also his the center of his army charged from the center as well, and Alexander coming from the right. Alexander eventually got caught up in the battle to where he was mixed in with the Persians after crossing the river, and Alexander was in the heat of the fight to the point where he got hit with I believe either a sword or an axe in the back of the head, and it dazed him because it really like left a mark, like the axe or either the sword left a cut in the back of his head. That's how the person was just really out to kill Alexander, obviously because they're in war. But that dazed Alexander, but then Alexander was able to kill that person by throwing a spear in his face. And then somebody else was trying to come from behind and kill Alexander, and they lifted up their hand to kill him. And then Alexander's another, I'm guessing he's another general, or maybe somebody that was really trusted. His name is Cletus the Black. Came from behind that Persian, and as that Persian was about to kill Alexander, he came from behind and cut off his arm right before that Persian killed Alexander. So that was getting into the battle that as you can see right here. Oh, actually, they have a yeah. See, that's the picture here. As Alexander's about to keep going, he got hit in the back of the head. This person is Cletus the Black, came from behind and cut off his arm and killed him. And also, like you see in the picture here, like I said, you always have traders and everything. You see in that red bar in the back is the Greek mercenaries, because the Persians also had obviously Greeks working with them. So basically, after it was all said and done, after the Alexander got his victory over the Persians, when Alexander was too much and Alexander's armies was too much for the Persians retreated and just left. And the Greeks that were there working for the Persians, they didn't back off. They stayed, and they were just real loyal to the Persians, so they stayed and fight. But the Persians left them behind. And then after it was all said and done, when the Alexander had these traitors in his hands, some of them he killed, and some of them he sent to be slaves in Greece. And that's pretty much the end of the fight. My bad if I didn't make it seem wild and crazy, but you should look it up yourself. But the main point I want to bring is that it wasn't just the Battle of Gaugamela. Alexander had previous wars that led up to the Battle of Gaugamela, and that when you go into the breakdown of Daniel's the 8th chapter, which Lord will I'll go into the Battle of Gaugamela, which is the final one. But there was also the second battle, like I said, which is the Battle of Issus, that happened a year later, right? Because it was the Battle of Granicus, which is 334, then the Battle of Issus, which is 333, and then the Battle of Gargamel, which is 331 BC. So Lord's will now also get into the Battle of Issus as well. But after Alexander had sold off, killed some of the Greek mercenaries that was working with the Persians, and some that he sent back to be slaves in Greece, you see a peace. That's why I want to get into, is because you see when you take over, you don't just. That's why I want to get into the battles, because Alexander didn't just take down Darius the Third or take down the Persian Empire and just automatically get all the land that the Persians were taking over. As he went to war with them, he also took over the land. And when he won this battle in Granicus River, I wish there was a picture, because I did search it up trying to find a picture. He won a piece. Let me see if I could find it. But for now, looking at this picture, he won a piece of Asia Minor, or a piece of Turkey, what it's called Turkey today. He got a piece of that land after winning that battle in the Battle of Granicus River. So it wasn't just Alexander beating the Persians and then he just had all the real estate, for lack of a better term. No, he got pieces of it over time after beating the Persians. So then after, like when you read about in Maccabees, let me just get that for you right now. So like, matter of fact, I'm just gonna read it from the book. I have it right here with me. Salakia. Salakia, just bear with me 1 second. That was the point that I want to bring out because he didn't just take over and just have everything. He had to win those wars and get the land as well. It says, First Maccabees chapter 1 verse 1, and after that, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth. Right. So as he made his wars, he won pieces of land, and that's how eventually he got control or took over the Persian or the Achaemenid Empire, and then added to his own kingdom. It wasn't just he beat Darius the Third and then, oh, okay, I'm in charge of everything. No, he took it over as he made his wars, like it says right here. I'll read it again. And verse 2, and made many wars and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth. Right. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Lord's willing, I'll be able to go into the Battle of Issus that happened in 333 BC, and so you can understand that that's the point I want to bring. That it wasn't just Alexander and Darius III at Gaugamela. There was fights previous before that, and I wanted to go into the history about that and show that as Alexander won his wars, he also took over the land, and then his empire expanded from just Greece to a little bit into Asia Minor, which is called Turkey today, and then it spread. You know, so I pray that was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem Rachak Shalom.